lunch. How are you feeling today? Good. That's good. We love training, and that's what we're here, right? Thank you, Senior, for that introduction. I really have forgotten some of the things I have done. Anyway, today I'm going to be talking to you about the global skill of English. It's a new model to improve motivation, confidence, and progress across all learning ages and stages. We're going to be talking today about the current challenges in English teaching. What are some of the challenges our students pose? We're going to be talking also about the full potential of the global skill of English. And how are we going to go granular into the Common European Framework? Also, I'm going to show you a very interesting tool that is called the Teacher Toolkit. It's free, you're going to see that. It's going to be very useful to whoever student we're teaching in English. So what are the main concerns of our students? Am I making progress? How good is my English? What do I have to do next? These are the questions that every single time they ask, and they ask us. And we tell them, yes, you're doing fine, we'll keep studying, keep going. But what are going to be the true markers for us to determine what's going to be the progress of our students? That's why in the late 90s and also the beginning of the millennia, they came up with the Common European Framework. We use it, we know it, and it's there because many legislations, many standards in education are set through the Common European Framework. And it's there. It's nothing that we're supposed to take away or take out. Think about the place this was created. What's in Switzerland? And it talks about a study of the European languages and what are going to be the standards for going from one level to the next one. Now, with this I want to ask you some questions. The first one, and you can discuss this with your peers and pairs and your tables. How many levels does the Common European Framework have? 6. I have options. 6, 9. Raise your hands. Let's do it more in an easier way. Raise your hands. Those of you who think it's about 1,000 hours. Raise your hands. Okay, we agree on that. 1,000 to 3,000 hours. Okay, very good. 3,000 to 8,000 hours. Okay. Ain't none of the above. Why? You never stop learning. But to become a master, that's how much it's going to take you. How realistic are going to be your courses of English? Now we're facing a bit of a trouble here. So how confident can we teach when the courses are way shorter than this? How much time do we actually need for practice, inside of the classroom and outside of the classroom? Let's think about it for a minute. Let me introduce you to the slippery slope of learning. This is us when we're learning English. Not just us, anyone. So let's put ourselves at the beginning. Okay. We are here, right? And we're going to go through different stages. Oops. That was my bad. Yeah, it's coming back. There we go. Okay, it's back. So as I was saying, we're going to be at the beginning of the slope, and we need to go out. So what happens with English is that in many cases, if we don't practice, what happens in the slope? We go down. Use it or lose it. That's what they say, right? So we can locate 3 learners into the slope. Where are they? They're going to be in different areas. So now we're going to have all kinds of learners learning English with us along the course. And for them to master English, to move up from one stage to the next one, they need descriptors. They're placed over there. So now, what's the difference between learner 2 and learner 3? Can you see? How far are they apart from each other? Not much, does it? Now, let's put them on the boundaries of the Common European Framework. What happens? So as we can see, the levels are a little bit broad, aren't they? In this case, learner 2 and learner 3 are very close together. If we remember on the scale, what's the name that we gave to a 2? It's a basic learner. But what about the one in B1? It's an independent learner. So how big is the gap between an elementary learner and an independent learner? It's very small. So we need to know how are we going to get from that stage, from number 2 to number 3. How many descriptors do we need? The Common European Framework gives us these descriptions in a box. So we have a box that we have to move on. From the first box, we move to the next one, and so on. But if we score an A2, they tell me, yeah, you're an A2. That's it. End of story. But what do you want to know? How far am I from a B1? That's what your students are going to be wondering. And that's how you are wondering as well. From the element I have used to assess them, to evaluate them. How much this element can tell me, how can they go from one level to the next one? That's what we have in Global Scale of English. And I want to show you that with a video right now. And first we need to define the can-do statements into what are we going to use them. For example, syllabuses, course material, national curricula, and everything extracted from the Common European Framework. All of these learning objectives are going to become can-do statements, and all of them at the end have been also taken into account by experts from around the world, teachers, students that have become part of this study. And they have determined what is going to be what level and what is stage. And all of this, of course, has given feedback to the research. So everything can have a consolidated set of descriptors that we can use. So this is going to become motivation for learning. With the GSE, as we can see here, we can demonstrate intervals with can-do statements that we're going to recognize, not just in general, but in every single stage. Not just in every stage, and also for every skill of the language. And on top of that, for the enabling skills of the language, such as vocabulary, grammar. So in that case, a level from the Common European Framework can be covered with objectives in a shorter time. So from 480 hours down to 95. And becoming an independent user from 120 hours to 25 hours. We are reducing gaps into 3 points in the global scale of English. If we want to move up 3 points, that's how much time it's going to take us, 25 hours. And so on. Now what I want to show you are the learning objectives. Now we understand that not all learners are the same. And we got to think about it. It's not the same to be an A1 as a young learner than as an adult. The Common European Framework tells us A1 is this. That's it. For everyone. But for the global scale of English, we need to make a bit of a distinction. For a basic user, for an A1, you have one of the descriptors could be to describe your work, where you're from, and where do you live. Right? So far so good. But for a kid, it's different. You don't have a job. You may not remember your street address completely, but you do have to remember your colors and your name. So the descriptor needs to be modified. And that's what we call the different learning objectives. So we have learning objectives for young learners, for adults, academic learners, and professional learners. And all of this can be available in one place. We can see them on the teacher toolkit. I'm going to talk to you about this tool because this is going to be very useful for all of you. If you're teaching English and you want to actually see progress in your students, you might want to come into this site, the teacher toolkit, And you are going to break down what does it mean to be an A1 in all the level, completely all the descriptors. You can take them out and see what is that you need to do in order to move on. So, and the website is going to appear like this. The website that is for the teacher toolkit is english.com/GSE, and you're going to be able to access this tool. First, you can select even the type of learning that you're teaching. For example, in the case of young learners, you can select it from there. Then, you're going to select the learning objective. Whether is it going to be from A2 to B1, or A2 plus to B1, etc. And you can filter with skills. Therefore, you can see, you can determine whether you want to have descriptors for reading, for writing, for listening, for speaking. And then, select it. And as you move the bar, you are going to see that you can become more specific and more specific within your class, because you can filter what kind of students you have, what around ages they are, what kind of a skill you want to use, and also what kind of a learner they are. Okay? And once you have selected everything, let's suppose in this case I have selected listening, that's how I'm going to see my results. As you can see, they're going to be, you can even filter them according to the Common European Framework and the GSE. But what you're going to notice with the GSE is going to be progression that you're going to have from the lower markers on the scale to the higher. And with this, it's going to be easier for you to see what kind of statements they are supposed to know. If my material, the one that I'm using, regardless of whichever material am I using, shows me this, that I can measure as progress with my students, I'm going on the right track. If my students can dominate this, they're doing well. Okay, order by GSE level. Okay, I think I went too far behind. I can even do this with grammatical expressions. Because maybe people might be thinking, well, what about grammar? That's also another marker I can use. Yes, in the global scale of English, we have to consider this for us to know what grammar is going to be appropriate, and that's the key word, appropriate, for every learner. For example, here, I'm going to select a category in the same group of learners between A2 and A1 and A2. Starting from the scale, you can see the scale that we need to use in order to measure the abilities of the students at the beginning. Because we cannot just propose what kind of material and not knowing where the students are. So the first thing we need to do, diagnostic. The same that we do for a test, the same that we do for a course, for an entry course, etc. We need to test it, we need to scale it. And with this in mind, we're going to determine the learning objectives with the student. With these learning objectives, remember that we had for children, we have for, what else? Adults, okay. What else do we have? Teens?
Academic or professional?
Academical and professional, thank you. So, with this in mind, we're going to determine what are going to be the learning objectives. And then, we can decide upon the course material. With this in mind, now we know what the students are, now we know what objectives we want to cross, and now we can decide what is going to be the course and the adequate product that we can use for the client. And none of this will be complete if we do not assess, we don't use materials for standardized exams. We at Pearson have these standardized exams. We're going to be talking about them later on the break if you want, but we have different kinds of materials for testing. One of them, for example, being lower stakes exams. These are the exams that we use for measuring progress in the class, or placement exams that we use in order to get the students placed in a proper level. But those are lower stakes exams. They don't represent too much challenge, too much risk, not challenge, risk. Then we have medium stakes exams. There are exams that are needed for institutions, for governments, for different organizations that require that the students have a standardized level of English. One of them, the Ministry of Education. And with this comes security. Because all of these exams need to have a certain amount of security in order to be valid. They need to follow protocols, they need to follow standardized rules, and of course they need to mark descriptors. And finally, we have higher stakes exams. These are the exams required for immigrational purposes, for entering universities across the globe. We at Pearson have all this kind of materials available. I want to start finishing my presentation talking about what experts have said about the global scale of English. It represents the most significant advance in performance-based approaches to language learning, teaching, and assessment since the development of a common European framework. And this is something that Mr. David Noonan has mentioned. And we have heard about him, especially those of us who had studied linguistics. Yeah, he said it. Part of the team that works with it, that has been the technical advisors of the Common European Framework, you can see them here. I can't name them all, I can't see their names, but I can name them all. Different researchers from many universities in Japan, in Europe, in North America, South America, even from Ecuador have contributed to this. Global's research over 6,000 teachers across 50 countries around the world, including Ecuador. So if you would like to know more about the global scale of English, you can go to this site, english.com/GSE, where you can find the teacher toolkit I have already presented to you. That's all I have for now. Nelsinho, you're up.